Hi everyone, Kaya here. I just wanted to take a second to thank everyone for all their support on my EDH Rec articles. Woo! So a lot of my time has been going into writing these articles, doing some 3D modeling. I haven't really had time to make any videos, but I decided that I had some spare time and I wanted to make a new video. So I wanted to take a second to shout out for my newest 3D model. It's a Cosmic, and he's really cool because every girl needs her Eldrazi bodyguard. So I also have some bad news. As some of you may or may not know, I actually made a 3D model of Bolas, and my cat destroyed it. I have the piece here. It's pretty easy to put together, but the Gatewatch could definitely learn a thing or two from my cat. But in any case, I've also been working on a new Dino deck. I don't know if anyone can see it, but I decided to go with Sun's Avatar just because I think it's better than the three-headed commander because the Sun Avatar is amazing tribal deck as opposed to a heavy mana cost toolkit. I also absolutely love the Enrage mechanic. I think it can get really nasty. So one thing I noticed in continuing posts and comments from players having issues playing with users from various reasons, as well as finding new groups in general, I've covered in my previous articles, but I thought it would be interesting to dive deeper into it in my first video podcast. As previously mentioned in my articles, I view EDH much like a board game, where a group of players and friends would gather together, have some fun, socialize. As someone with social anxiety, I personally feel more comfortable playing a group game than playing in a 1v1 setting where it just feels more intense. I'm sure there's many who feel the same and prefer EDH for pretty similar reasons. EDH obviously still has many elements to consider when starting down with a new group. To discuss this further, I have a behavioral expert here. So despite many of his horrific flaws,
But I'm pretty.
So he thinks. But he does have experience working with both mental health and playing Magic for years. So please give me a warm welcome for Brandon.
Hi! I'm no expert. I'm just the only one you can get on this camera.
Fair enough.
So I used to be a crisis counselor for several years. And, usually when I had to deal with the community and everything that I worked with, it usually had to do with, young kids with social anxiety was a very common theme. And it came with, people having difficulty trying to socialize with one another. The cool thing about EDH, as you mentioned, is it gives you an opportunity to sit down at the table, treat it like a board game, and if you have those issues like social anxiety, or you feel awkward, or you're not too sure about what you should do for socializing, you can also kind of hide behind the game and, worrying about the mechanics over everything else. So when it comes to EDH, there's kind of two factors or two layers when it comes to interacting with someone else. One, there's the social layer, which is probably the most important. It's in everything we do. If you're playing or watching football, if you're with a group of buddies, it's simply that social interaction between everyone at the table. And then there's that second layer, which again kind of helps that first layer of the board game. And that is the kind of decks you play, casual, hardcore. If there's politics involved, which is heavy in EDH, which can be a little daunting for some people. So there's definitely, there's two layers to it, and then again, if you're having an issue with one layer, you can use that other layer to support it. So if I was a nice person, for example, but I had an issue with EDH politics because I have social anxiety and, people quite frankly can be a little rude and say, well, don't hit me because da-da-da, hit them. I do it to you all the time. So, you can, again, hide behind the niceness or, be polite, and then even if you make that wrong play, people are going to hound you a lot less, or if they do, that's clearly their fault.
Yeah. Well, I just want to throw it out there. I have no issues with politics. I'm pretty guilty of it. So, the ideal first impression is nice with a deck that isn't stomping everyone else. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I mean, more to your point that you've had in the articles, the last thing you want to do is sit down with a group of people and then accidentally curb stomp them because you played a higher power level than everyone else.
Mm-hmm.
So, I would agree with you that if you sat down at a table, you would probably pull out one of your weaker decks, find out what the group power level is, and then go from there. Because, unfortunately, you can't tell the power level from a commander alone. We've all seen that Zur deck, which we immediately want to burn to the ground, or a Johora deck.
Why are you naming all my decks?
That you want to burn to the ground. But you don't know if it's going to be a nice deck or a mean deck. And you can't trust people to tell you what casual is going to be casual, because their definition is always going to be different than yours.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. So, what are some of the do's and don'ts? Like, for example, I absolutely hate it when people touch my Masterpiece Mana Crypt. I know it's rare, I know it's shiny, I know it's really cool, but get your grubby hands off it. Ask me first. I don't mind if you want to look at it. It is rare, but seriously, don't just snatch the cards. What do you think?
So, I think maybe we don't tell them they have grubby hands. But no, I mean, when it comes to the do's and don'ts, it sounds a little bit fatherly and cliche, but if it's a don't for you, it's probably a don't for everyone else. And we've all been guilty of grabbing a card without asking permission. But on the flip side, you don't have to be weird about it. You don't have to be too robotic or, like, can I please touch this? Is this okay? Please, sir. Mother, may I? You can just simply look at the card and be like, oh, this is really cool. I've never seen this before. Do you mind if I touch it?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Why, thank you, madame.
Yes, quite.
Tastes delicious.
My dino card.
And that's what you might run into if you play with me too often. So, but I mean, again, when it comes to the do's and don'ts, it's simply what you might not like. And then, of course, you'll develop a lot of those things if you're a newer player by simply watching the crowd. Again, I err on the safe side of caution, and then go from there.
Okay. So, one thing that's come across my mind every so often is, what about people who have limited access to a large EDH community? We're obviously, we're in Orlando. It's pretty heavy populated here, so we can just play with a new group every day, even if we wanted to. But what about those in less populated areas?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, here in Orlando, if I don't like someone, I could simply go and play with a new person every day, probably, and then go off that for a while. But, honestly, I've been around the country. Even in the smaller areas, there's still plenty of EDH players. It's kind of a twofold answer. So, one, if there's simply not enough people, take it upon yourself, make that your responsibility, and take the blame that there's not enough people playing EDH, and start teaching other people. So, the more people you get, especially your friends that you're already comfortable with, to get to play the EDH, which is a fun game, you'll spread that smaller community really quickly. And then there's two, if you're having a continuous problem with everyone to the point where you have no one to play with, it kind of goes the same way about sex. Let me make this weird. I mean, if you're sleeping with one girl, I went there. If you're sleeping with one girl and she's bad in bed, fine, that's her. But if you're sleeping with every girl and they're all bad in bed, it's probably you. So, again, if you're having an issue with every single person that you're playing with, which, we seem to see a lot with some people, you take a deep look at yourself. And then, again, if you don't happen to mix with that crowd, maybe Magic the Gathering players in general just aren't your cup of tea, get your own friends to play. So.
All right, fair enough. I will say, though, ever since taking my own advice, which is, it's always really difficult, we've actually gotten a few girls in the area to play EDH recently, which is really awesome.
Ooh la la.
Yes, it's kind of tiresome when you're the only girl playing. So, for those who don't know about the articles we're referring to, I have it listed somewhere below in the abyss.
Magic.
But in short, here's a few ways to get someone to play the game for the first time. The first, number one, playing in a location that's more comfy and new for a person. Maybe try having them play at home rather than at the shop, because there's a little bit of anxiety at the shop. I have a buddy who loves Magic, but she refuses to play at the shop just because there's a little much anxiety. So we test the waters, we play here, and then when she builds more confidence, we'll take her to the shop. The second thing is you should be overdramatic about their turns and what they play. Meaning, when they play something, be dramatic. Just be like, oh my god, you Psychonic Rift everything. Or, hey, you just Armageddon and destroyed all of our lands.
Why is that your go-to?
Listen, if they're going to be my apprentice, they're going to Armageddon.
Oh my god.
Okay, maybe don't take after me. But in any case, moving on, the third thing is being gentle and not responding when you can and letting them win. Now, this one can be tricky. Just let them win every so often. Doesn't have to be all the time. Just enough to boost their ego, let them see that, you know, they're doing something right, and then eventually let reality set in.
Yeah, so
better.
It sounds like you're setting reward systems.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fourth thing is do not take long turns. I understand in competitive, I don't take long turns. I'm actually pretty quick. And
you're making me self-conscious.
Well, it's okay. In any case, don't take long turns.
Oh, you're back for Bolas, aren't you?
She's back for more.
Oh God, she actually knocked it down.
Oh God, Chloe, get out of the way. That was my cat. Yeah,
she's sitting.
She's soon to be the new overlord for the Gatewatch. Anyways.
Really?
Really? Sweetheart, we're shooting a video. Is this an inconvenience for you?
No. We'll go around this. You're not the center of our world. Go on.
No, yeah. Anyways, so the fourth thing, which I feel is important.
No! Goodbye, Bolas. God.
For those of you who can't see, she just knocked over Bolas before she exited my video. In any case, we're going to move on to number 4. Not taking long turns, especially with girls. So the biggest thing is, I know that, especially in competitive, your turns can be pretty long, and that's fine. That's competitive. But if you're playing a casual game, especially with a beginner, try to be more discreet with your turns. Explain everything properly, but just don't take too long. Because if the girl's looking more at her phone than being engaged in the game, then you basically lost. She's not going to be interested, and she's just not going to feel engaged.
Can I give a fun fact real quick? Come on.
Is it magic related?
It'll be magical. So, cool fact, by the way, if you're ever at a bar or you want to talk to a girl at a library or what have you, sometimes getting a girl's attention can be very difficult. That's something I struggle with sometimes a lot. I realize, though, if you get them to look at your phone, you are in the in. That's a golden rule that I stand by, and I've noticed it everywhere. Actually, as a crisis counselor, this sounds bad, but I would show them, like, you know, pictures of, like, my pets and stuff to, like, kind of open that door to talk to someone that I needed to, you know, find out if they're suicidal or what have you. Because, you know, once you get them into your phone, or whatever you want to get them to focus into, their world becomes a part of yours, opposed to fighting, you know, their own cell phone or what have you. So again, if you're at a bar, you're talking to girls, get them to look at your phone. Again, if you have nieces, you have nephews, you have pets, that's your in. So relating that to magic a little bit, one thing you can do is while you're playing a game, if someone is taking a long turn, you could just look over to the girl and be like, hey, want to see this cool Magic the Gathering artwork that I just saw the other day? Oh my God. Really put in the M for magic there.
Listen, it works, okay? I've seen it work before, and it's adorable. Anyways, so, moving on. Since it's been coming out recently, we've seen a lot of cases of bullying throughout the Magic community. How would you suggest someone to handle those situations?
Oh, more serious. So there's, when it comes to bullying, there's two kinds. I mean, there's, like, blatant, like, strong bullying, and then there's sometimes where you just have a very strong presence, and then, again, as you have social anxiety, that can seem a little intense.
Yeah.
So, I mean, really, when it comes to dealing with someone, it's respectful. If someone, like, has a different belief system, like if they're religious or, you know, whatever the difference might be in there, you know, you keep it down to the card game. And then usually, you know, you have friends and everyone else to back it up, because no matter what kind of conflict you and someone get into, if it's your fault, if it's their fault, you now have two people hostage in the game that have to deal with that tension. Mm-hmm. So you can kind of rely on the group to just keep it to the game. Mm-hmm. If it's blatant, though, one thing that I've always found with bullying, because I was bullied a lot as a child, is the way that you react to bullying will usually dictate if you're going to continue to be bullied. And it's a very careful subject to get into because, of course, you never want to blame the victim. But, you know, for example, let's say, for example, I looked at you and I called you something crazy like, hey, what's up, sugar tits? You know?
Well, that's a new one.
Yeah, right? So, I mean, if you huffed and puffed and you flipped the table and everything else, I'm obviously in the wrong. It's not completely your fault for, of course, being upset and reacting the way you did. Mm-hmm. But if you reacted differently, that'll probably end that. So, for example, if someone looked at me and they said, "Hey, what's up, sugar tits?" One, I'd probably end up laughing. But two, I would probably look at them and be like, "Really, sugar tits? What'd your favorite hentai site go down? Here's an idea, buddy. The next time you get a tingle in your pants, why don't you look down at your own pair of tits and just wank away? Because, quite honestly, they're bigger than anyone else's in the room." If you said that, or any kind of witty comeback, again, everyone at the table will laugh. It'll turn the attention on them. They were already wrong for their comments, and now they're embarrassed, and that shit will stop immediately.
So it kind of shuts it down. You're trying to basically shut down the bullying before it progresses any further.
Yeah, I mean, what it'll do is it'll show you have a thick skin, so they can't bother you, and it'll real kill them, and then usually people that bully aren't used to getting it back too much. Well, at least the blatant bullying. Some people, again, are allowed to be obnoxious, so, if you rat on them, they rat on you.
Yeah.
The Bill Burr, what was the cartoon the Bill Burr had?
Oh,
when they were talking about, like, the female harassment in the workplace?
F is for family?
Yeah, how the boss or coworker treated that way is actually kind of similar to, a good way to treat bullying. Again, it doesn't work for everyone, but it's definitely something I would try. Being witty is sometimes difficult for a lot of people, but, what other people might not realize is it's a skill. You don't need to be inherently born with it. You don't need to be overly intelligent. You don't need to be fast. It's something you can practice in front of a mirror, and you get better with it over time. Especially if you have social anxiety, or any kind of anxiety at all. Practicing in the mirror will do wonders. Again, those one-on-one approaches, that's why, your first point, I think it was, when it came to, starting at home, starting at a, not to sound like the colleges, but a safe space.
Yeah.
Those work. And then you can go and kind of level up like a video game.
Yeah. Oh. That's some, pretty deep stuff to think about. Well, on that note, I think it is time, that's about it for the time, for our first, video podcast. So for those interested in learning more, below is the link to some great deck ideas for interacting with other players. Let me know what you think, and if you think I'm wrong on any point in this video, come at me, bro.
Oh, one cool tidbit of information. Sorry, not to end your video. One more thing. So if you notice that you're playing with a group person and they're very twitchy with their hands, that's usually a sign of anxiety. If you do that yourself, it might be something to work on. That's why the fidget spinners became such a huge thing. But, people knew about the hands thing. So if you're dealing with someone and they're quiet and their hands are fluttering, maybe that's a sign that they're a little anxious or they feel a little bit of pressure or what have you. Mm-hmm. So, you can take measures with that, kind of include them. Usually when it comes to trying to get someone out of their comfort zone, if you're with a group of friends and a new person comes in, what helps greatly is not directing them into things, but directing conversations towards other people and getting them involved in it. Be like, right, Frank? Right, Cheryl? That works a lot better. So, again, just another tidpiece of random, probably useless to most people advice.
All right. Well, in any case, that concludes our video for today. Let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. And like I've said before in the past and just a few seconds ago, if you don't agree with me, come at me, bro. See ya.